Hey guys, this Myth Week, there's an opportunity to win prizes.
Yeah, but not just one of you guys to win, but three. We have 3 bundle prizes.
And here's what you could win. The Myth Game, 10 card sleeve packs, a Clear Brigand, for whenever that little rat guy goes into the shadows, a Trickster pack, which has 2 models and the cards, and a Twilight Night pack with a single model and the cards. In order to win, all you have to do is comment on this video here on YouTube or on beastofwar.com or the corresponding post over on the Facebook page. Or you can do all 3 and triple your chances.
Really? That easy, huh?
That easy. At the end of the week, we'll be picking the 3 winners, and you guys will get awesome Myth bundles. Hey guys, so this is a video I've been dying to make. I've been looking forward to talking more in depth about the monsters in the board game Myth. And now that we have the creators from MegaCon Games, Keith, Kenny, and Brian, now's my opportunity to really get my teeth, figuratively speaking, into the monsters. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. Right, this is all about the monsters. This whole game is about hacking and slashing my way through amazing monsters. I love the art direction. I love the style of the minis. What can you tell me about the monsters? Give me the meat on this.
If the heroes are the really unique thing that the players get to feel, the meat and the lifeblood of Myth is in its monsters. They're the coolest figures. The size differences really allow you to play a game that's, when it's on the table, is interesting to look at. It's almost, I would say it's beautiful. I was going to say almost beautiful, but it's beautiful because you have small minions, you have slightly bigger captains, you have big mini bosses, and you have giant bosses. And the heroes are kind of in between, and sometimes they look like they're the most powerful thing on the tile when they're fighting the minions. But when you put the boss out there, they don't look so powerful anymore. They kind of look like the little heroes that they are. And so it's a very cool visual. And I think in large part because of Keith's art direction and how good the miniatures look.
Yeah, but oh man. No, yeah, we had just a wonderful time just brainstorming, the types of creatures that you could fight. And I mean, there's such a massive spectrum in terms of just, a fantasy universe. And so there's certainly some classic kind of monsters that hopefully have a little bit of a different spin. I think the grubbers sort of have a a pirate sort of look, and I mean the crawlers. Yeah, I want to call them insectoid type creatures. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go. It's almost you have to kind of rein it in a little bit in terms of where you want to go. But yeah, we had a really good time coming up with those kind of creatures.
Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about the classifications then of monsters because they start with minions. Okay,
yeah.
So if we start with minions and then we'll work our way up to the badasses at the top. So. What can you tell us about the minions then, and minions as monsters? Currently in the box game, there's 2 types of minions, or
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, there's crawlers and grubbers. By the names, not very important, and that's the thing to note. Minions are meant to be destroyed in giant swaths by the heroes. But the interesting part about the minions is if you don't take care of the minions, they will be the thing to kill you because they will surround you and eat your face, as we like to say here. Oh my gosh, that crawler just ate my face. Yeah, that's what just happened. And then moving up, the captains appear less often and in fewer numbers, but a captain is formidable. They take usually multiple heroes to focus in on a captain because they also, when you have a captain, you start to get fate dice recipes and special rules. Minions are very simple. They go and they attack. Captains, poison. They cause fear. They have armor. They knock you prone. There's all kinds of different things that can happen with a captain. And even less often, you'll have something like a mini-boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mini-boss is like a step up, basically. Right beneath the boss, you've got this kind of mini-boss character, that... They're like a wild card. I mean, really, in terms of the kinds of attacks that they'll do and when they can pop out and when they come out, they often have the capacity to bring more minions in
from the edges of the tile, either by some kind of special ability or spawning from themselves. They are harder to hit. Oftentimes, you need multiple successes to even hurt a mini boss. They have auras that affect heroes in different kinds of ways. They're just bad news, and they're very, very tough. In fact, a lot of people who've already played the game and started to talk about it, they'll say, "Oh, I fought the first boss Yardu," and I'm thinking, no, that's just the mini boss. That's not even a real boss.
So after the mini boss, then you get to the boss. Now the boss that's the terror with a million legs or whatever. It's absolutely terrifying stuff.
Yeah, top of the food chain kind of monster. Bosses have multiple stages, so you don't even just defeat it easily the first time. It just moves into a much more difficult phase. You can blame our growing up with Final Fantasy games and video games where the boss never seems to stop.
No.
Yeah.
And so it takes a whole party to focus on a boss, to defeat a boss. And even then, there'll probably be a casualty or two. It's just the nature. We want the bosses to be difficult. It comes from the understanding that when you fight a boss, the first time you fight a boss, you will lose, but you'll figure something out. Then you'll fight the boss again, and you'll win a little bit. But if you figure out how to fight a boss, and each boss is kind of a Rubik's Cube to try to solve, that if you figure it out, you won't take hardly any damage whatsoever. But it takes some time to figure out how to fight a boss.
And in terms then of how the monsters, there are monsters that'll fight in close combat, but there's also ranged monsters as well. There's the full spectrum there. The darkness that drives these monsters, they're not lacking in anything, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, right. I mean, in the base game, you've got your two different types, and the grubbers are all melee. They run up, they need to be adjacent to heroes and just basically pummel them to death. They also have, like an armored ability, so they actually are harder to hit than the other minions that you'd normally be facing. On the other side, well, let me finish with the grubbers here first. Basically, there's another classification that says what type of minion it is. Grubbers are intelligent. So when they're moving to attack the heroes, let's just say a grubber was one space away from a hero. Well, he's not going to only move one to get to that hero if he's, part of his priorities. He's going to move as far as he can around the hero and still be in range. So the rest of his minion figures behind him, his little pals, are going to move in behind him. It makes more room for his guys so he can attack better. Now, the crawlers, on the other hand, they are instinct. So as soon as they reach a target, they stop, regardless of if they're blocking the path for other crawlers behind them. So in that alone will change how the board dynamic works when minions are moving.
The crawlers also have two types. Do they have a melee type and a ranged type?
They do.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and the melee type will always, instead of just like being stuck somewhere, the melee tries to stay at maximum range to a hero and still attack it. Right. So if you're not moving forward to try to stop these guys, or like having the archer or the apprentice take them down, then they're just going to pummel someone like the soldier or even the brigand into nothingness.
Yeah, it's dealing with dealing with the targets available to you. If you only deal with the targets in front of you, you're going to be receiving a lot of extra attacks from all those range that are just going to kite you around the tile. If you understand the term kite, I mean, it means they're going to lead you as far away as possible. That if you don't do something to close the distance and kill them, you're not going to catch them and you're not going to kill them. You're going to take a lot of extra damage you didn't have to take.
Yeah. Now let's talk about how monsters appear. There are these things called layers. How do layers work?
Essentially, when the players set up the board and there's a layer placed, depending on the number of players, there's X amount of minions placed around that layer as an initial starting amount of enemies. And then as the darkness reaches 6 AP, when you draw that darkness card, depending on what card you drew, it'll tell you whether it's a certain type of spawn. Yeah. And that spawn, the numbers for the spawn are on the actual minion card. It'll say, oh, it's a normal spawn. Well, 2 melee crawlers, 2 range crawlers. And you'll put those adjacent to the layer as close as possible to targets.
Right. There's so many different types of spawns, too. I mean, we have spawns that when monsters appear, they get to activate again. We have spawns that if they appear double. We have spawns where the lair blows up and just spits out 15 of a particular creature. There's so many different types of spawns that you don't necessarily know exactly what you need to do, except you need to take down the lair. You know, old school games like Gauntlet, where you had to fight through the monsters to defeat the spawner. And if you didn't defeat the spawner, you were never going to win the game because they were going to keep spitting out creatures. But how the risk reward of defeating that lair and putting yourself in jeopardy and putting yourself in the middle of danger. I mean, you have to kind of balance how badly you want to take down the lair versus how much you want to receive.
Well, for me, that's one of the most amazing things. Yes, it's a board game. It's a board game that it's got scenarios and stories and everything in the book, but it's much more than that. What we're discovering as we play it is the ultimate hack and slash adventure toolkit. So the monsters. I could get some tiles and just pick through the monsters, write up a cool scenario, invite my friends over and say, this is the storyline we're going to play tonight. Check this out. And I could use as much or as little, I suppose, of some of the game mechanics that you guys have built. So I could have my layers in there and use the mechanics for spawning monsters. Or if I want, it seems to me I could just have the monsters that I want just there on the board, and we just have to fight our way through and gain our treasure and then go and buy cool kit. What I have to ask, what is the future? What's in store for us monster-wise?
Well, I'll take the first one, and then I'll let Keith take one or whatever. But so, as people have found out when they fought Yardu, the mini boss, he has a pretty amazing ability that not only the fact that he can keep attacking heroes with Devastate, which is pretty bad, but he can also summon a creature called a Soulless, which is what's going to be on our first releases of figures, and it's basically an undead, type of monster. You've got Shamblers, which are skeletons, and they're not going to be able to move very fast, but their mechanic is going to be they can resurrect if that Soulless captain is out with them. So when a hero hits them, you have to roll fate dice, and if that fate dice comes up darkness, well, the Shambler just raises back up, and you don't generate any treasure if you kill them.
Awesome.
But the great thing then is the Acolyte then also has another utility because some of his spells are holy based, and if he hits any undead with holy based stuff, they don't get a chance to resurrect no matter what.
Right.
So we're trying to incorporate things from the heroes into things that we're going to have in the minions. Like maybe some just really hate the apprentice, and they're kind of like his nemesis.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going with for that one, and then Keith can take another one if he wants.
Well, I want to talk about Orkney as the master of masters.
That's a pretty sweet one.
So the boss for the Grubbers and the Muckers, the Grubbers and Muckers in the base game, the boss Orkney is master of masters. Basically, the bosses take kind of all the visual style to sort of the extreme. And so this guy is walking around with giant axes and screaming, and he has a war drum that he beats to bring in more of his minion guys when you're fighting him, and he's got his arsenal of beverages around his waist. And he drinks to health, and that's a problem for the hero. So
that's why he's the master of masters.
Exactly. And it should be known that it must always be stated. He is the master of masters.
Yes. The idea behind the entire game is, and this is why we can have so much fun with it, because we can go to visual extremes, because it doesn't necessarily have to be taking place in a real life environment. It's basically a bunch of friends by the campfire or a bunch of friends at a bar drinking and telling the stories of their adventures, and it's who has the biggest fish story. So the bosses get bigger and more daunting, and you have an undead boss that's carried by a bunch of skeletons in a wagon, and it just looks cool. It looks impressive, and it's fun. It's the heroes feel like heroes, and the monsters are intimidating. And what more can you ask for?
Have you got any tips for any of our viewers at home that are playing this and they decide they want to try and introduce one or two of their own monsters? Have you any tips on how they would go about kind of working out the stats or pointing up or creating a monster?
My tip would be to just basically look at the 2 minion cards, and you can look at target numbers of attacks and like the armor value that they have in order to be hit. and get really close to those numbers. They can make it a little less or like one more. You don't want to mess too much, like +2 or something like that. But then you try to find a unique mechanic with that monster type that is different from the ones that you're currently playing with, like how I talked about with the Shamblers resurrecting. They could have something else entirely, like maybe monsters when they get hit, or heroes when they get hit, their movement's reduced by half.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just an example of it.
Yeah, it's a nice. I would suggest people start with the fate dice. You know, understanding those symbols and what they represent, and say, okay, I'm going to create a monster that has to do with rage, or I'm going to create a monster that has to do with the arcane. And what do I want my rage monster to do? Maybe that when you attack him, he gets more powerful. I mean, we can create a monster right here. Instead of the grubbers, when you attack them, they have 2 hit points. If you don't kill them right away, they have twice the dice they had to begin with. You know, I mean, it's that easy. It's how much fun do you want to have with it?
Well, guys, look, thank you so much for that. So there we have it. That's that's a great overview of the monsters of Myth. I love them. The art direction is superb, and it really is. It's like the best of video gaming, tabletop gaming. It's hack and slash. It's adventure. Most importantly, it's you and your buddy sitting around a table having a great night's entertainment. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for watching.